Okay, guys, our next guest has worked on Wall Street for nearly 10 years at some of the big firms, Bear Stearns, JP Morgan Chase. Lots of works at some of the more popular Bitcoin companies, Brave New Coin, Cointelegraph, currently LibertyLifeTrail, early entrepreneur into Bitcoin space, and a guy who's doing a whole lot in the space as far as promotion, adoption, etc. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Tone Vays.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad to be on. Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with my work, but I'm an analyst and a trader. I don't trade the crypto space. I don't do that on purpose. I used to trade a little bit, but now I just do my analysis. I talk about trading, and I still trade traditional markets. My view is I don't talk about the trading that I do because that's my competitive advantage. And the trading that I talk about, I don't take positions in those trades, which allow me to, first of all, not to front run my followers. And also, I'm not tied to a trade. So this way, if I'm in a bad trade and then all of a sudden the market is flipping and I'm staying in that trade, what I think about the price isn't influenced by my position. So I've become a little popular in the space. I've been writing about trading and doing technical analysis for a while. As for my background, I really liked what Bitcoin was offering with its permissionless value transfer. And I don't know how experienced people are with the space. We're currently going through a little bit of a technical hiccup and some debates, but I do have a presentation that I give, and I'm going to go through that now. I'm going to do a screen share, and it's a presentation I give often. It's about the history of Bitcoin, how we got here, and the price bubbles. So unless there's anything else, I'll do a screen share and start a presentation for you.
Yeah, it sounds good, Tone. And then we'll have a couple Q&A at the very end if you've got time. I appreciate it.
Excellent. By the way, this presentation is public. You can find it if you go to Prezi. It's called Prezi. And if you just search inside Prezi, pretend like you're going to log in, and then there'll be like a thing called Explore. And you just search for my name, Tone Vays, or presentation like Bitcoin speculation. And you'll find all my presentations. The one I'm going to give now, I haven't had a chance to update it in the last month, but it's okay. I'll do some live charts soon after. Here's a little bit more about my background. I started a new podcast called CryptoScam. It's been pretty popular. I wish I had a little more time because it's only up to 7 episodes. And in that podcast, I try to expose a lot of the nonsense that's happening in the crypto space. And I try to find a competent co-host for each episode. And then we discuss our views on projects or other Bitcoin competitors, I guess, as some people like to call them. Okay, so I'm sure it will load in a few minutes. But basically, you're not really missing much. The background, even though it's currently not in focus, is the price, the historical price of Bitcoin. I'm using the Brave New Coin Liquid Index, and we're starting down here at 10 cents. And it goes all the way up to 1,200, where we were in 2013. And then this is approximately where we are today. But I like to start this presentation even before the creation of Bitcoin. And there was, still is, a Nobel Prize-winning economist that had his views talking about the internet. And what he said was he didn't see the internet being more useful than a fax machine because people didn't have all that much to say to each other. He was ridiculed. Paul Krugman was ridiculed for that statement. He tried to back down from it by saying he was half joking. But those were the views in early 2005. I remember loving the internet even before 2005. Around the same time, there was another Nobel Prize-winning economist, and I think there is no way for me to play this video, being it that it's a live stream, but it is a video of Milton Friedman, and this video, I'm just gonna go to Google for 1 second, and you can just do Milton Friedman predicts Bitcoin. In 1999. By the way, that Paul Krugman comment was in 1998. He said by 2005 it was going to be no bigger than a fax machine. But if you Google, this is the video I would have played. Milton Friedman predicts the rise of Bitcoin in 1999, and the way he phrased it, it's only like a 1-minute video. So I strongly encourage you guys to check that out. Let's see if this is now fully loaded. Much better. Okay, and what Milton Friedman basically said, he didn't like how the government was taking over everything. And what Milton Friedman said was, the internet will go a long way in reducing the role of government. But what the internet is missing is the ability for people, for person A to pay person B without person A knowing who person B is or person B knowing who person A is. So basically, he was saying that the internet will never reach its full potential unless there is a cash component on the internet. And then he specifically says that it would also allow for lots of criminal activity to take place on the internet, just like with cash today. Unfortunately, he wasn't around to see the rise of Bitcoin. So those were, that was pre-Bitcoin. Bitcoin started out and it spent almost 2 years being worthless up to 10 cents. And then Bitcoin gained its first pieces of value up to 50 cents. And I personally attribute that to WikiLeaks. Back in December 2010, somebody suggested that in order for WikiLeaks not to get shut down after they were no longer allowed to accept credit cards or PayPal, is that WikiLeaks should accept Bitcoin. And the creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, actually didn't want that. He didn't want the attention, and he didn't think Bitcoin was technologically ready for that kind of attention. Now, at that time, the darknet markets, especially Silk Road, were already in operation. And that was Bitcoin's biggest use case here, from about $1, and it went all the way to $30. Now, what greatly contributed it, this is still the biggest bubble Bitcoin ever had, going from $1 to $30. And that's being contributed to our New York Senator Chuck Schumer, that went on TV for about 1.5 minutes, just literally doing an advertisement for Silk Road and Tor. He basically was so angry that people were buying drugs on the internet that he went on TV talking about this needs to be stopped. They're using this currency called Bitcoin. They're using this anonymous IP routing software called Tor, and then he showed Silk Road, and he basically did a whole tutorial in 1 minute as a senator on how to buy drugs on the internet and just have them delivered to your house using Bitcoin. So thank you, Senator Chuck Schumer, because that greatly put Bitcoin in the spotlight. And even though it didn't end well for the speculators, the price of Bitcoin then crashed 98%, from $30 back to $2, but it never saw the $1 again. That's kind of been the history of Bitcoin. Every time it had a bubble, it never went lower than where the bubble started. This brings us to 2012. And in 2012, things come down a little bit, and China was mostly responsible for this latest bubble because Bitcoin was mentioned on CCTV, which is like their government-sponsored TV station, watched by an average of 500 million people, which is greater than the population of the United States. So that helped put Bitcoin on the map, and also the Chinese exchanges were already in operation here. Prior to that, there was only one exchange out of Japan called Mt. Gox, which we will get to in a minute. had one more bubble where it crashed 50%. I don't even remember the real cause of this. I should probably look that up. So here's Japan. So here comes 2013. There were several major events in 2013. One of them was the halving. So this is where the reward of Bitcoin got cut in half. You were no longer creating 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. You were creating 25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. Another huge contributing factor was the fact that the exchange out of Japan apparently was always running a fractional reserve due to other notorious things and a hack back in 2011. Lots of details there. So like every organization that starts to look like a Ponzi, they don't admit to it and they try to fix it. And as they try to fix it, they almost always make things worse. So one of the solutions that the Japanese exchange Mt. Gox decided to do was to create this Willy bot that would create fake trades, creating optimal prices for their exchange so they can kind of make their users whole, though it ended up working the other way around. So that contributed. There was another huge contributing factor to the rise of Bitcoin in early 2013 from $10 all the way to $250. This is the event that finally got me off my butt, even though I heard about Bitcoin since late 2010, early 2011. Unfortunately, I missed becoming rich in Bitcoin because only the events in Europe finally made me serious and made me think about Bitcoin. More specifically, the events of Cyprus. So in March of 2013, there were events in Cyprus. By the way, if you have anything to add, just like jump right in as I go.
No, we'll wait to the very end and then we'll bombard you with questions. Keep going. This is okay. You've got our attention. We're on the edge of the seats here.
Excellent. All right. Oh, how much time do I have for the presentation so I can kind of time it from here? 20 minutes? 30?
You have 4 minutes left. I'm
no,
kidding.
Seriously.
Take as much time as you need. Yeah, you're good.
All right, cool. All right, so the events of Cyprus, where the banking system shut down over the weekend, and they initially wanted to tax, would impose a 6.75% tax on deposits of less than 100,000 euros, and then a nice round even number of 9.9% above that level, because 10% would be too morally obvious. And they would tax them on that money beyond $100,000. And that created a huge outrage, of course, as it should have. And they eventually settled on only taxing above 100,000 euros, but they taxed it at a 47.5% clip. So they basically stole 47.5% of everybody's money that had over 100,000 euros in the bank. And you wonder why the value of the euro has continually been going down for the last 4 or 5 years. And I remember this well, and this scared me. And I was a way bigger gold bug back then, way bigger, libertarian back then than I am even today. But I remember I was like, I was still working on Wall Street. I remember like trying to be like the Ron Paul guy. This can happen anywhere. This can happen here. And everyone is laughing at me saying, no, this can't happen here. It's only Cyprus. It's not going to happen anywhere else. It's not going to happen in a real country. And so I took this seriously, and this finally got me off my butt. And I said, you know what? Maybe it's time to own this weird asset, Bitcoin. Because what I knew about Bitcoin is that it was the only asset that no one can confiscate from you. And if you really think about it, Bitcoin is the only asset of value that humanity had ever had that cannot be taken away from them. Like even like a person's body can be taken from them, right? So anything can. Your money, your house, your property, anything, but not Bitcoin. If you properly protect your Bitcoin, no one even needs to know you have it, and therefore it cannot be taken from you by force. And I still find that to be the most important property of Bitcoin. All right, so of course, all bubbles come to an end, and me being a trader and even knowing what I'm doing, ended up getting caught in this bubble to 250, and then I watched my position fall 75% in value, which was a nice, which was a very fresh awakening. So then we chuggle along, and of course, I'm sitting on my losing position, but I always believed in Bitcoin. And then we had this blip right here where one day the price of Bitcoin fell from about 120 down to 85 bucks. And this was the Silk Road shutdown. The feds eventually got the Silk Road and they shut it down. And I remember that day so clearly because all my coworkers are still making fun of me for being a Bitcoiner. And they know, everyone knows what Bitcoin is really used for, just to buy drugs on the internet. And they also know that's not something I've ever done. That's not something I do. But on that day, I was at work, and at least I think 2 people came up to my desk making fun of me, like, haha, the drug site got shut down. What are you going to use your Bitcoin for now? But but like 2 days later, the price went back up, and then it started to go up. This is when all the U.S. exchanges are getting shut down because of regulation. The Japanese exchange is having major problems and rumors. The Chinese exchanges are taking over everything. And more importantly, there were these U.S. Senate hearings where the senator leading the Senate hearings looked very positively, not positively, but very hands-off towards Bitcoin. He was trying to compare it to the internet, and he was trying to understand whether Bitcoin is something that should be left alone to see what happens, or if Bitcoin is something that needs to be immediately regulated. One of the reasons why internet was able to do what it did was because it was kind of left alone to see where it goes. Bitcoin is a little bit different because Bitcoin is money. Okay, so this kind of goes through the history of the rise of Bitcoin. And now, let's talk a little bit about the fall of Bitcoin. So after Bitcoin went up 1,000 times from $10 all the way to $1,000, went up 100 times, sorry, went up 10x and then 10x. A bigger rise than anything before. And it ran into a little bit of a hiccup on the way down. And this was an interesting time for Bitcoin. I personally, you don't recognize bubbles as they happen. But this took a while. And if you look at the way Bitcoin fell, here's a good comparison. So blue is Bitcoin, only instead of a logarithmic chart that I used as the backdrop, the blue is the Bitcoin, which is in a linear chart. So this blip right down here, hope you guys can see my mouse, is the rise to 250, and this one up here is the rise to 1,200. I backdropped it against another asset whose scale goes from about $10 up to $50. And normally when I do these live, I ask the audience to try and guess what that asset is. But in this case, I'm just going to tell you it's silver. And this is the silver peak in 2011. Now, the time doesn't match. But if you look at how silver fell to how Bitcoin fell, they're literally identical. You had this pre-peak, you had the main peak, you had this, and it didn't just do that. It like literally followed the typical, bubble chart, and where you have this drop and then everything looks okay, and then boom, it really falls. And a lot of people, like you asked the question, so where is Bitcoin today on this chart? And you have to realize, well, have we really hit the mania phase yet for the common consumer? And the answer is no. Of course, Bitcoin can technically collapse. But if it doesn't, the mania phase hasn't really hit yet. So it's possible we're like way, way back here on the left. We don't even see it because this chart will continuously repeat as long as you don't fall way further than you were before. So if you look at it, then you had this, base where it hit a couple of times, and then it falls lower quickly, creating a low with a quick rise then after, and then that doesn't hold, and then it eventually goes lower. And then it turns. And after it turned, gold became the leader. And silver was now following, Bitcoin became the leader, not gold. Gold was similar, by the way. And Bitcoin became the leader, but then it broke down. The relationship broke down. It didn't last. But that's also because I don't think gold and silver are all that useful now that I am aware of Bitcoin, and I have other presentations. I'll gladly come on again. I have other presentations about traditional stock markets. I do a very similar presentation about the history of the Dow Jones since the Federal Reserve, and I compare it to gold. Maybe I can throw those charts up just as a teaser at the end if we have time. But I have other presentations that are similar to this, only they don't focus on Bitcoin. They focus on other parts of finance. And one of the reasons why Bitcoin was going down was because all this adoption was happening with local merchants. But merchants don't care about Bitcoin. They intake the Bitcoin to sell their goods. They immediately sell it as market orders on the open market. One of the reasons why Bitcoin was driven up to 1,200 is because there wasn't really all that many places to spend Bitcoin. Once there were more places to spend Bitcoin, those with Bitcoin are going to use it. But those that are accepting it don't care about Bitcoin, so it's as if everyone is now selling Bitcoin. And I was in a couple of debates where I said, well, if PayPal implements Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going to go back to $20 from $1,000, because anyone with PayPal, you can just, if you have Bitcoin, you pay in Bitcoin, PayPal will sell the Bitcoin and give the person on the other end dollars, which is not what I want for Bitcoin. And I never did. And I forgot to mention my little, economics 101, supply and demand. But in Bitcoin, it's different, because normally, what is supply, what is demand? Well, in Bitcoin, the demand is new users that believe in Bitcoin. Supply is not just Bitcoins being mined. That's predictable. That's a mathematical formula that is very well known. The supply is also merchants selling the Bitcoin, not caring to hold on to the Bitcoin, creating a circular economy, passing it on to their suppliers, passing it on to their employees. And that's not how I want Bitcoin used. But let's talk about demand. Demand becomes important. And I tried pointing it out with my top use cases for Bitcoin. And I chose this list very carefully. There are other use cases for Bitcoin, but everything on this list is a voluntary transaction. And that's the point. The point is that Bitcoin gave us a censorship-resistant value transfer. And it becomes useful in transactions that are actually censored. Other use cases is something like CryptoLocker, where you're being ransomed to unlock your computer. Now, I don't really see that as a voluntary transaction. I see that more as a forced transaction. The silver lining on that is, well, it's going to make Windows more secure, or eliminate Windows from existence, and everyone's going to use a more secure operating system, right? So there can be an argument made as to the good that CryptoLocker does, and it does introduce people to Bitcoin by forcing, like a 65-year-old grandma to learn how to get her Bitcoin, buy it from an ATM to unlock her computer. But on this list, the one I really want to focus on, I'm sure I mentioned some of these. I don't know if everybody can read the small print.
Yeah, we especially love number 5 and number 1. Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, excellent. The one I really want to talk about. By the way, this article has more information. You can Google it. It's on my website, LibertyLifeTrail, right here in the upper right. Or you can just Google the top use cases of Bitcoin, and this will probably be the first hit. I actually provide charts. Look, the divorce rates are serious. You know, a lot of rich people don't want to get married for that reason. I mean, if you can protect some more of your assets, it might improve the marriage rates here. Anyway, the use case that I really want to talk about is, I didn't zoom in on that. Interesting. The one I really want to talk about is the last one, transferring values cross-border. That is actually the most important thing, and I want to get into that. So in transferring values cross-border, we have to talk about Europe, because Europe is just a complete social disaster. They created this euro very badly. They wanted to create the United States, but they forgot the two most important components that made the US dollar great. One of them was the fact that the United States had a common language, so everyone in the States kind of was forced to interact with each other. And the other problem is the United States consolidated the debts of all the states into a single US country debt, both things that Europe did not do. So now Europe has a huge, huge problem. And also they're even more socialist than the United States is. So I expect a complete breakup of the euro. And the first time I ever gave this presentation was in February of 2015. And I said to the audience, when the Greek banks collapse, when the Greek banks shut down, like Cyprus, things will be very different. And that actually happened 6 months later. So ever since then, I've been talking about Italian banks having a bank holiday, which almost happened twice. And then there is Spain. And then there is France and Germany. They're in not better shape. And with the migrant crisis, things are only going to get worse. I mean, tensions are very, very high in Europe. Britain already left. If Le Pen wins the French election, she's swearing that she's going to take France out of the euro. And France and Germany were the creators of the euro. So everything is going to be falling apart. And what happens when things start to fall apart? Europe had fallen apart before, about 60 years ago, leading to a major world war. So when those things fall apart, people move. I mean, Europe fell apart way before that, where people got up and moved to America. And I was making fun of this picture saying, well, the French will never actually move to London. But now that London is no longer part of the euro, if they actually get out of the Eurozone, or actually out of the European Union, sorry. The Eurozone is the currency. It's so confusing over there. It's insane. And they might actually, start moving around. And when people move, they take their valuables with them, and that's where Bitcoin comes in. But some of the other reasons why people move is taxes start to get out of control. Again, the US revolution was started over taxes. It was only a 3% tax, and now we're paying God knows what. But it's taxes. And New Jersey is supposedly put in an exit tax to leave the state if you're going to move out. It's weird. People are very, very confused on it. I've been an Airbnb user since the very early days of Airbnb. I loved it. I loved Airbnb. It was so much cheaper. It was so much more convenient. And then one day I was going to a Bitcoin conference to speak, and I noticed, and I know how much my Airbnb is supposed to cost. And I'm like, well, what is this? Why is it so expensive? And I'm like, oh my God, I have to pay like 25% more for my Airbnb. All these taxes just showed up out of nowhere. They weren't there before. And now Airbnb is no longer that more advantageous than hotels. So some things are going to have to change. And while I was doing that, this was 2 years ago, by the way. So this is probably worse. I need to update the slide. Airbnb hit me with a brand new terms of service agreement. And no one ever reads these things anyway. You just hit agree. But I noticed that the scroll bar was way smaller than normal. So I decided to copy it. I did a Control-A, Control-C, and then Control-P in a Microsoft Word document. And I'm like sitting there going, okay, I was waiting 30 seconds for Microsoft Word to count the number of words in this document. They came out to 33,000 words in an Airbnb terms of service, something that I've used from like the first 6 months of its existence, and very self-explanatory. And then you compare it to some of the other, achievements in history, like the U.S. Declaration of Independence only being 1,300 words, or the U.S. Constitution only being, under 9,000 words. People used to make fun of the EU regulation of the sale of cabbage being 27,000 words. And then Satoshi Nakamoto gives us Bitcoin with a white paper of only 3,400 words. And I'm sure Airbnb's service has gotten way bigger. And this is one of the problems, is that our laws as well are getting out of control. Again, this is where I normally ask the audience to guess what piece of U.S. legislation this is. Let me see. Who can guess this? I'll give you the mic.
So, well, one person said tax code, another said Obamacare.
Obamacare wins it. This is Obamacare. Some people say that Dodd-Frank, but Dodd-Frank was significantly smaller. This actually is Obamacare. So when people say no one understands Obamacare or no one knows what is in it, it's a 33,000-page document. Okay? This is the problem. And when the regulation starts to get out of control, people and companies start to get kind of sarcastic. And this is Volturo, who exchanges gold for Bitcoin. And they have a little disclaimer at the bottom that says, I confirm that I am not a resident of Iran, Syria, North Korea, or the state of New York. This was in regards to the bit license on Bitcoin in the state of New York. Okay. Now, this was something I discovered recently. This is... I've been talking about this, but it was great that someone actually did a study on it. This is out of the Harvard Business Review, and they looked at the countries and how they would go about eliminating cash. So they phrased the problem perfectly. Governments want to eliminate cash. They want to eliminate cash for 3 reasons. And I've spoken about these reasons, but it was great that all 3 was mentioned in this Harvard business study. So 2 of them are mentioned right here. And one of them is that without cash, a person can't exit the system. Without cash, you can't have a bank run. You can't, there's no lines. So, I'm going to add it to this presentation. Like the famous pictures of the Great Depression, people standing like in a giant line in front of their banks and in front of the ATM machines are identical to the pictures from Greece and Cyprus. The only difference is the new ones are in color and the old ones are black and white. Other than that, they look identical. But if there's no cash, you can't go to a bank, you can't take anything out. So it completely eliminates a bank run, creating more panic, and all these, these pictures will be left to the history books. Also, it allows the government to create any monetary policy they like, because people wouldn't be able to exit the system. So here come negative interest rates. They can charge you money for saving money. And there's nothing you can do about it, right? You can't move that money into anything. It would be, and I'll get to gold in a second. So that's another one, like the negative interest rates. This is negative interest rates were introduced by, what's his name, Larry Summers. And this is the same person that's saying that the $100 bill and the $50 bill need to be eliminated. Which is difficult to do for America because U.S. currency is a global currency, much easier to do in other countries. But the biggest reason that governments need to eliminate cash is because they think every one of us is a tax evader and we're all money launderers and we're all tax cheats. And the only reason why government hasn't solved all of our problems is because all of us are not paying our fair share in taxes. That's why we don't have a utopia yet. And they actually, this study, by the way, this study is like a year old. This is way before what happened in India recently. And they specifically focused on India, and it was great to get some numbers in that Indian cash economy is so big that 30 to 44% of that GDP is not accounted for in the tax revenue, which is probably why India wanted to eliminate cash so badly. But the article also points out that India is in the worst possible position to actually eliminate cash. And this is where these pictures come in. And it took me like a good hour to like really understand it because of the way it was phrased. So what you're looking at here is this is the cost to the government of maintaining a cash society, like keeping cash in circulation. So blue is low, yellow is medium, and red is high. So for Canada and for Scandinavian countries, for example, in Argentina, what that means is it costs the government very little money to provide a cash system, like keeping the ATMs filled, printing the cash, keeping an eye on the cash. The cost to government is small. Yellow is the cost to government is medium. And red, the cost to maintaining a cash system is very, very expensive. So either the cash system is very high, or government is just too diligent keeping an eye on that cash. So they're wasting a lot of government resources keeping an eye on the cash. But here is an index that, again, it's a little complicated, but it shows you which country. So blue, yellow, and red shows you how much the cash system costs. But the higher you are on this matrix, the more ready your society is to eliminate that cash. So what that means is Germany, France, and Belgium would actually, the population would actually is ready for the elimination of cash. It's very simple for them to do. So if you're in the upper right-hand corner, your society has the most to benefit from that elimination of cash. But look where India is, right? India is all the way on the right, so and all the way down. So and what that means is that they are least ready. They will being all the way on the right means you would benefit the most from removing the cash. But the lower you are, the less technologically your society is ready to eliminate that cash. So what happened in India was completely ridiculous. That's why you saw that insanity if you paid attention to it, people running around from bank to bank. I can get more into it, but that could be in its own presentation. So Europe is going really, really heavy in eliminating cash. France is very, very serious. If you're a foreigner, you get a little more leeway. If you're a citizen, any exchange of cash over 1,000 euros needs to be documented and KYC'd. So you can't really do anything over 1,000 euros. Here's an example from America where they passed a law in Louisiana, which is kind of difficult to now find, but there is the statute, RS 37, 1866, which is a little harder to find now. Maybe they're trying to remove it from view on the internet, even though it's on the books, because no one can enforce it and no one can do it. They made it illegal to exchange secondhand goods for cash. So if you're having a garage sale and you want to sell your old bicycle for $20, you're legally not supposed to accept a $20 bill. You can use a credit card, you can use a check, you can use something that identifies that person. And this is, again, some of the insanity that happens with laws in an over-socialist society. Here we go. Here's an example from Germany, which is also terrible, and I'll read that part in bold on top. This amendment not only aims to combating illicit traffic in cultural objects in Germany, but at limiting ways of funding terror organizations that are more and more financed by illegal excavations at archaeological sites, as well as the illicit trade in that cultural material. Now, you have to read between the lines here. What Germany is saying is, any object of historical value over 100 euros needs to be identified, and the person needs to, they need to know who that person is. Now, this is done for several reasons. One of them is, in the future, they will probably tax people based on if they hold some collectibles of value. More importantly, of all the countries, maybe in the world, Germany knows very well what happens in times of distress and people need to get the hell out of your country. They will take whatever valuables they possess. This is why back in France, people built fake wine cellars, people hid art, people put money in anything valuable and hid it during World War II and then tried to get it out of the country. Now, this is where gold becomes interesting. Historically, gold has been the perfect asset to just hide your wealth in and then take your gold cross borders. But current advancements in technology like electricity and metal detectors have made that a major problem. It now becomes very, very difficult to move your gold. And also in a digital age, it's kind of hard, right? Like we need digital payments. The technology has advanced beyond gold's ability to cope with it. So what happens when, as I expect, Europe is going to have a complete meltdown? Again, a whole other presentation. What happens to a society when it kind of implodes from within? Well, people get up and leave. This is the population of Rome. I got this picture from Martin Armstrong. I love his blog. I wish I actually had time to read it these days. I'm probably 6 months behind at this point. Great economist. And he shows picture of the population of Rome, which peaked at 1.5 million people in 400 AD. And then Rome collapsed because of its public sector. Now, the public sector in Rome was soldiers. Rome was policing the world, and they owed all this money to the soldiers, and then they kept cutting their pensions, they kept devaluing the currency, they kept messing with their healthcare benefits, until the point where Caesar took the army back, and though that happened earlier, not 400 AD, that was already past Caesar's time, but the armies basically wanted what was owed to them, and they stopped protecting Rome, and it kind of collapsed under its own weight. And now when you see that yellow circle, we're back to how bubbles collapse, right? It falls, and then, it's back to normal. Everything is going back up, and then you have a bigger crash. The population of Rome bottomed 1,000 years later at 20,000 people. So it went from 1.5 million to 20,000 people. And now Rome is back. Recently, this century, the population had finally crossed to new all-time highs. And again, gold becomes a problem if you're going to use gold to transfer your value. Again, we're talking about that one use case of value cross borders. And here is a customs form. I took the country out, and you can see that they're asking you on the customs form, even if you're wearing gold jewelry, because if it's above the certain amount, you have an issue. I'm not sure why there's such a huge interest in satellite phones, but hey, I don't make the custom forms. And here's what happens, and this is what people don't always understand. Here are two headlines from the same publication, TechCrunch. Here is one from February 2015, about 4 or 5 months before the Greek crisis, that says why Greece should not switch to Bitcoin. And here's the same publication, TechCrunch, about a month after the Greek crisis, that says Bitcoin provider Qubits aims to help Greeks move their money. Okay, so that's an example of not realizing use cases of Bitcoin. So let's talk about the price, which is something that, and I'm going to conclude here. So back when I was writing for Cointelegraph, I wrote an article on August 31st, 2014. So that was a while ago. I wanted to, just for fun, wanted to do a time analysis. I never trade using time analysis. I always trade using price analysis. But I have been following Martin Armstrong's work for a while now, and he's big on cycles and time analysis. So I used the most basic parts of his economic model, and I just threw it out there for fun. I'm like, let me find critical dates, future dates in the life of Bitcoin. And this was in 2014, so the prior dates came out to be 2011.16, which was in the middle of March 2011, which corresponded to a huge rise. And then it corresponded to April 2013, which also corresponded to another bubble. It was very interesting. My next critical date for Bitcoin was 2015.46. Now, remember, the article was written almost 1 year earlier than this June 2015 date. I only put the month down. I didn't find this. I didn't think this would amount to anything, so I didn't put the date in there. But the date was around June 16th, 2015. You just have to convert 0.46 into dates out of 365. That's all. So it's about halfway through the year, just under halfway through the year. So that puts us in the middle of June. And my next critical date is going to come up in August 2017. Now, at the time, I didn't know if this date is going to correspond to some kind of a low or some kind of a high. But going into 2015, it was obvious it was going to be a low. What I think is complete luck, you can see it right up here. That date, the Greek crisis, almost to the day, but definitely within a week to the Greek banking shutdown. Now, I was preparing for it. And there are other videos of me, other interviews of me. I was looking for this date to be the final low in the fall of Bitcoin. And I expected that price to be in the mid to low 100s. Unfortunately, my time analysis worked, and I still consider this day to be the turning point in Bitcoin that gave us the current trend change to the upside. But the price had fallen to my optimal value earlier that year in June, and then it had fallen again then after. So I had problems trading my view that this is a special date corresponding to the trend change, because nothing in trading is simple. People sometimes make fun of me that I got the bottom wrong, but I've been calling for a low in the 100 ever since I saw this red triangle. So in a way, you can say I missed it, but I still say that I came within 5% of calling it perfectly. It just happened to get there 6 months earlier than my date, and then 4 months later than my date. But some people were able to time it. Now, the rest of the pictures is every time I give this presentation, I just show how I was seeing the price at the time. And I'm going to get to the last picture. These were my views. Everything I do, I don't backwash, I don't remove anything. If I make a bad call, I make a bad call. I drew this channel. I'm trying to remember when I drew this channel. Okay, so this channel has been here for a while. Here it is, and it's not here yet. So there's no channel here, but the channel is already here. So somewhere in late 2015 or early 2016, I drew this pink channel. And these were my presentations then after. And this was probably a mistake. I thought that we would fall out of the channel and retest. We never did. We kind of just stayed flat. But we did bounce off the bottom of this channel. And I kept this channel going. And every time it came down, I would draw another green arrow telling people it's a good time to buy. I have a whole happened with the latest halving. Not going to get into it here. And here's the channel. And I was very vocal about what's going to happen right here. Where this was the China news that they're going to regulate. Let me see if I have those on here. And I drew that green arrow. And here it is. So now we're coming to the end. So this was a presentation I did in Toronto in early February of this year. During this, and again, like I like making these charts and I publish these charts. I really like this. Like the price goes up, it kept hitting the wall, bust through this red line, and then boom, we come back and touch it. We literally touched it. Came back up, and then we came back and touched it. So here are the Twitter messages as this was happening. So on this day right here, on January 5th, somebody tweeted that it's a perfect buy-in opportunity. The price was $900. And I replied, because I do these videos all the time, I would say 750 to 75 is a perfect buy point. That was this red line right there, which I had drawn from before. But 900 is okay. But 750, 775 would be perfect. In other tweets, I specifically said 760. And here's, on that day, someone wrote, getting close to 760. And they're asking me, am I still going to sell everything I own to buy Bitcoin? I was joking about that. I said that if Bitcoin gets back to 760, I'm going to sell, either my car or my apartment or something and buy Bitcoin. I was joking. I didn't actually do it. Maybe I should have, but I'm not impulsive like that. Again, I don't trade Bitcoin. I just hold on to what I have and try not to lose it, which is a challenge. We can talk about that separately. And I wrote right here, probably just mentally, but if anyone wants to sell me some at 760 or lower, please private message me. The next day, here's a follow-up from that same person that saw me do that reply. He says, if Bitcoin holds above 775 from now on, then Tone had the most accurate technical analysis there. Now, I've gotten things wrong too. This was just an easy one. And here's another person saying that me and him were the only ones specifically calling for that 760. And I replied, was it luck? I don't know, but I stick to my technical analysis, though if I trade it, it's not going to work out. Now, as far as my long-term view, here's a quote from me on January 3rd of this year. And here's what I said. I see a very strong start to 2017. A lot depends on SegWit passing, but it will be confidence and speculation in the eventual consensus on SegWit being passed that should drive the price to as high as $2,000 by end of summer, just like the price went up 3 months prior to the halving. Then we'll pull back and probably close the year between 1,500 to 1,750. That's what I said on January 3rd of this year. I'm still sticking to that view that Bitcoin will reach 2,000 by end of summer. And specifically going back to that time analysis I did in 2014 that pegged mid-August of this year to a critical date in Bitcoin. And I think that would be the high for Bitcoin at around 2,000. And then we'll have a little bit of weakness. So that's pretty much it. Those charts are a little bit out of date, but we can take a look at what that channel looks like right now. I hope you guys can see it. Otherwise, I could zoom in. If you can see it well, then I don't need to zoom in. I was very vocal, and it's all over Twitter, about the 915 price being a good buy-in opportunity, not only from the ETF, but also with this current debate on the SegWit versus Bitcoin Unlimited. Here is that same liquid index chart, which and it looks bad, but look, we're still bouncing around this line, which I expected. And I expected us to break out sometime in April. So we went over it a little bit. Now we're under it a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. This volume is, again, a whole other presentation. And finally, this was from a video I did about 2 hours ago, where I don't like to recommend trades, but I said this would be a trade that I would do because it has great risk reward. buy your Bitcoin. And I did it right there live on video. And I'll put that video back up again shortly. I took it down and made it private. I have to edit something, and then I'll put it back up. And I said, well, I'd buy Bitcoin at 1020 right now, but I would have a stop loss at 980. But I'm looking for it to go back to almost 1200 because, again, I like my technical analysis and I trade technically. So that's it for me. Unless there are any more questions, I hope I didn't take too long. I don't know how late your meetup normally runs. So I hope you guys enjoyed that.
Okay. Yeah. First off, Tone, let me say that was awesome. Absolutely. Lots of information. Very impressive. Let me get a couple questions from the audience. I think we've got some. One question I did want to ask, if you want to start, and I'll move to the next guy. How do you feel, with your background in Wall Street, how do you feel legally speaking about the explosion that we see in kind of the realm of the initial coin offerings? Everybody's building these coins, launching these coins. I mean, technically, we're talking about securities being sold. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I think it's absolutely terrible. Look, when I came to this space, I was under the impression that I was doing evil things, Wall Street, the 2008 crisis. I was like, I'm going to come to, it's libertarianism, and we're going to show them how things need to be done. And now I'm here in this space. I have a podcast called CryptoScam. I think the amount of scams in this space is out of control. Like, at this point, I now defend the Federal Reserve. I now defend Wall Street. And all of that came from being in this space. I completely understand why they do what they do and why we have all this regulation. Now, here's my only issue with it, is that I'm not a fan of regulation. I'm not a fan of regulation of the consumer. But what I'm looking for is I want strong consumer protections without knowing who the consumer is. Like, we can protect the consumer without identifying that consumer. And what these ICOs are doing, actually, they're just selling nonsense to the greater fool. Is no legit ICO. I think they're all scams. The one that's actually gonna come close to being legit is what Brock Pierce has recently set out to do. But that one is very, very different. It's not like the typical ICO. I was very, very critical of Ethereum from day one. I never bought into Ethereum. I thought, how are you gonna? I didn't realize to get around regulations. Sales, you sell a security that doesn't yet exist. I mean, this is how ridiculous it is. So yeah, I think we do need regulations. We need to take it easy. I believe that money laundering should not be a crime. I think your money should be your money. But as far as protecting the consumer, I mean, all these ICOs are doing for non-credited investors because they don't know what they're doing. So that's kind of my view on things. Unless anybody, I can keep it. I have lots of content on it, but that's my general view.
Thanks. I have a question about Bitcoin Unlimited. So
Sure.
My basic question is, what's your take on it? The experience I've had with Ether is that when they had what you call a hard fork, it was the two resulting coins are worth less combined than the previous coin was in terms of value. So I think there's the rumors of that sort of hard fork have been growing in the last few days, last few weeks. Just wondering if you have any opinion or comment about Bitcoin Unlimited and how to trade it.
Well, I don't have any opinion on how to trade it, but I have infinite amounts of opinion on Bitcoin Unlimited. I just like hours and hours of video content on it. I think it's absolutely terrible. I don't even like, I mean, even friends of mine, before they went to that side, like, I don't even want to talk to them anymore. Bad. I see Bitcoin Unlimited as a complete hostile takeover to eliminate the smart developers that have taken us this far. and they're completely incompetent. Their code is based on a year-old code base. They want to buy their fast, cheap transactions now without any regard for any of the use cases in my article. Like, they would throw censorship resistance and decentralization out the window as long as they can make quick Starbucks purchases. That seems to all they care about. They don't have a long-term vision. It's also dangerous on many other. I'm going to share my screen in 1 second. Let me do that now again. Let me get to here. So I strongly recommend going to my website, LibertyLifeTrail. My screen real quick. Going to my website, LibertyLifeTrail, and looking for this article right here. Is called "Is a Bitcoin Hard Fork Still Avoidable?" And I try not to panic people, but if a Bitcoin hard fork happens, it's going to be really, really bad. If they hard fork and Bitcoin Unlimited chain doesn't die within 3 months, there's a good chance that the entire cryptocurrency experiment has failed, and it'll never be the same. I have very strong views that we need SegWit, and this is the 3rd attempt to hijack Bitcoin. Bitcoin XT was the first, Bitcoin Classic was the second, Bitcoin Unlimited is the third. And when they lose, there's going to be a fourth. Bitcoin has always been fighting hostile actors, trying to take over its development and centralize its mining. And this is a bigger fight than all the previous ones combined. So that's kind of, I also have a debate with Roger Ver. If you go to...
Hey, Tone, I've got the link. I can actually send it out. I think it was about an hour and a half. Yeah, I watched that as well, so I'll send that out.
Yeah, that's great. If you go to my if you go to my YouTube channel, the 2 most popular videos are me debating Roger Ver on SegWit versus Unlimited, and then Johnny from Blockstream, who did a much better job than me debating Roger. And then, like, my CryptoScam episodes, like here is I explain why Dash. I explain all the problems in Dash, and this is me somewhat debating Andy Hoffman over gold manipulation, which is a lot of people's favorite video I've done. And here I am debating if Bitcoin is or isn't a scam. I mean, we have to be skeptical about everything in this space. So these videos might also interest you. Oh, and here's a documentary, Magic Money. I was very happy to participate in this documentary. If you use the discount code TONE, T-O-N-E, on Vimeo, it'll save you guys 30% if anyone's interested.
We're out of time, so I want to tell you, first off, thank you very much. I want to let you know that we'll put up any links that you send me. I'll post this video, re-edit it, and put any links you want in there. And man, just really appreciate you coming on. Big round of applause, guys, for Tone Vays.
Thanks, guys.